First of all, just want to thank everybody for joining us today to take you through what we think are some exciting accounts payable options to really help you operate more efficiently, more securely, and at the end of the day, save you money. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to first start off with the true cost of accounts payable. An invoice takes a long journey through an office, and there's a lot of costs associated with it. We want to spend a couple minutes on that, and then we'll kick it over to Wendy, who will talk about optimizing that workflow, both from getting the invoice into the system as well as passing it around for approvals. She'll show you how to handle that once it's actually been approved and to make the payment. And then it will flow over to Casey, who will discuss some e-payment optimization options that I think are the most exciting products that we have available right now. And then we'll wrap it up with security and the benefits of positive pay. There's going to be three main themes: speed and efficiency, security, and saving you money. So everything we talk about is going to touch on those three things. Processing an invoice is expensive, right? It takes a long time. It's an important part of every organization. Nobody likes to pay bills, but it's a necessary evil, right? As we break down the costs, I want to get into some of the assumptions that we're making. First of all, there's two main components. The first is the labor. So you have AP clerks and you have managers. They get paid at different rates, but they all have a role to play. And there's also, of course, your hard supply costs. So what is that? That's your check stock and your toner, your envelope, and your postage. So these are the factors we're taking into account. There's a variety of steps that come into this, and we're going to show you how we can automate each of these steps. But the first part is somebody receives it, they open up the mail, they read the invoice, they manually key it in with the appropriate information. They may or may not match it against a purchase order, or maybe some of you are using work orders in MDS, which is like a basic purchase order system. They could be looking at a budget. All those things take time. It's estimated to take between 8 to 10 minutes per invoice. So it's in the system now. Now there's going to be some kind of an approval process. I think a lot of you are probably still passing paper around the office. We're going to show you how you can make that more efficient. But then there's also going to be some exception handling, which also takes time. We know that there's not an exception on every invoice, but on some small fraction of invoices that does occur. So these things have to start getting routed, however that's going to happen. It might need to go to a property manager. It might need to even go out to a third party, like a board member. Somebody has to review it, look at it, handle it, maybe mark it up. If there's any kind of duplication or exception handling, questions that might have to get asked to other parts of the organization. Hey, did this really get done? Is this what we agreed to? That sort of a thing. That's all being done either on the phone or yelling across the office or via email. All those things take time. So again, we're estimating a 2 to 3 minute time spent by a clerk, and then another 1 to 3 minute on the approval level. So a weighted average, we're saying 1 to 2 minutes on this step. Total combined, 4 to 8 minutes per invoice. At that point, you put it into the system. Somebody has put eyeballs on it, probably more than one person. There's probably been some questions asked, and it's time to actually make the payment. So what happens there? Somebody's going to print the check. If they're doing it manually in the office, you're going to match them up with the invoices. You're going to stuff the envelope. You're going to apply the postage, and you're going to mail the check. Again, that's a 2 to 4 minute process. So finally, there's some filing and storage that takes place. Somebody has to actually put this thing into a copy cabinet. Sometimes it may actually have to get scanned if you're going to want to at some point forward it onto the board or anything like that. But it takes time, because at the end of the day, you want to have this thing accessible to you. And this is not really even including the time that it might take to actually run to the filing cabinet, pull it out, and review it in the case that you needed to actually take a look at this thing at some point in the future. That's just cumbersome if you're doing it manually. So again, we're estimating 1 to 2 minutes per invoice, which all adds up to 17 to 24 minutes per invoice. I know what you guys are thinking, that your staff is amazing. They are AP ninjas, and they do it faster than anybody. You could trim 20% off of all this, and the business case still makes sense for automating this. We're talking just a little under $10 to $15 an invoice. A lot of these costs are hidden to you, but they are there. At this point, I'm going to kick it over to Wendy, who's going to show you how you can handle like the first mile of this process with scanning and then, of course, invoice approvals.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome everyone. My portion of this webinar will be to give you a high-level overview of the MDS RapidPay system. There are two main components to the core RapidPay system. It's the ability to automate your invoice processing. And so I'll be wearing two hats during my demonstration. I'm going to log in first as an AP staff member. One of the things that RapidPay does is it helps to eliminate a lot of the manual data entry that you are currently doing. Customers have reported to us that it saves them up to 80% and sometimes more of data entry. It does use OCR, so it learns to read off of those invoices, and I'll show you how that works, which allows for just much faster, more accurate AP processing. It's also built into the MDS core accounting system, so it's pulling directly from your vendor preference settings for things like insurance expirations or terms on the vendor or your default expense accounts, things like that. I will also be logging in as an approver. So you can set up, based upon your business requirements, multi-level approvals based upon how invoices need to get routed. Everything from dollar thresholds, invoice types, roles, categories. Categories are user definable, by the way. There's a full audit of the entire life cycle of the invoice, and it allows you to ensure compliance and accountability, no lost invoices. And I'll also show you how you can incorporate the images of those invoices into your report packages and through other reporting as well. So I'm going to share my screen. And as I mentioned, I'm logging in as an AP staff member. And the first thing I'm going to do is I can scan or upload invoices into the system. There's a lot of other things you can do here. For instance, if you're sorting your invoices before you scan them or upload them, duplex, multi-pages, maybe they're all first, you're sorted by company, et cetera. You can do all that here. I'm going to leave it blank for now. I'm going to select my document type, which is going to be a standard invoice. Standard invoice is going to be the bulk of the invoices that you're scanning. However, we do have templates, for instance, like New York City Water Board or other utility type invoices. So the difference is maybe a Con Ed invoice, it's going to pull all of the usage information, whereas standard invoices, it doesn't have all of those fields. We're going to stick to standard for now. The other thing that I want to point out is these categories are user definable. This is what drives, so part of what drives the approval workflow. So for instance, if I select repairs as my category, I know that with repairs, I have multiple levels, so people that need to approve those invoices, whereas utility, it's automatically approved. So I'm going to go ahead and hit upload. And the first thing is the system's going to do is allow me to view them quickly just to make sure that the way I scan them in is the way I want them entered into the system. For instance, it's automatically going to insert a page break after every page if I didn't indicate differently in that first screen. But say, for instance, these two pages belong to the same invoice, I could simply click on that and it will associate these two pages and now it's one. That's not the case here. So I'm going to click on it again to insert that page break again. I'm going to hit finish. If you have a lot of invoices you're scanning in, you could either do it from the top or the bottom. So this is basically saying all invoices have successfully been validated. Do you want to send these invoices to MDS Explorer for final verification? That means out of the 7 invoices that I scanned in, it actually read them all. I'm going to hit cancel here because I want you to see what they look like. So without doing any data entry, the system was able to know what company, vendor, invoice number, due date, invoice type, the expense account, et cetera. It pulled it all. How does it know? The very first time that you're scanning those invoices into the system, it may be able to read things like invoice date, invoice number, dollar amount, right? Because it does use OCR. However, there's no way for it to know the first time what building code it should be associated to in your MDS software system or what vendor it's associated to. You have to teach it. You teach it one time, and the way you do that is you select from your list of companies, right? Your whole company list is going to be here. And then you say, okay, now that I select BC Tower as my company, I'm going to highlight anywhere on the invoice that indicates what represents that company. So the bill to is what I'm looking for. And now it says, okay, BC Tower in this section on the invoice read as bill to BC Tower, and it's associated to company BC Tower in my MDS system. You would do the same thing for vendor. Okay. And so that's how it learns. Now, once everything is coded, I can hit finish and proceed. So that's all you need to do from an AP perspective is Once you start using it, make sure like the first 1 or 2 months, there's a little bit of teaching, but then once you get past that, it does eliminate a tremendous amount of your data entry. It won't pick up things like manual invoices or hard to read carbon copies, things like that. So now I'm going to shift gears and log in from the perspective of an approver. Typically, an approver was going to receive an email because oftentimes they're not in front of a computer. They might be out in the field or traveling or going from property to property. So they'll get an email that says, you have invoices that require your approval. Click on this link. It'll take them to their dashboard. These are the invoices that I have to approve, not all of the invoices that need approval, just the ones that I need to approve. And they can be in different stages. So I can go ahead and click on any one of these. It could have from that list sorted by company, by vendor, etc. And so now I can't edit anything here, but I can approve or reject. So I'm going to go ahead and this invoice looks good. This is basically saying, are you sure you want to approve this invoice for payment? And if you have a lot of invoices that require your approval, if you don't want to get that, are you sure every time, you could simply say, do not ask again for this session. So now it's going to allow me to continue approving the remaining invoices that require my approval. I could reject an invoice. I could ask for a correction or send it back to the AP staff. I could reject and do not pay. It's going to force me to put a reject reason here. If I have a question about the invoice, I could send a message to somebody within the AP staff. Was this work done? Is there a contract? Was there a receipt? So now that message is going to stay with that invoice, right? So there's an audit of the communication going back and forth. You can also assign a tenant chargeback if you wanted to. So if this is caused by damage in an apartment and you want to create a chargeback to the tenant, you're able to do that from the screen. You can track the entire life cycle of when it was initially scanned in, when it was coded. Right now it's pending my approval. And that invoice audit stays with the invoice as well. Message log is all of the communication back and forth. A couple of other things that you can do very quickly. If I needed to upload additional attachments to that image, maybe a receipt or contract or something else, you can do that. If I needed to download, if I want to zoom in or out, you can do that. And lastly, I'll point out this annotation tool. Oftentimes they're doing this process manually. They're getting their invoices. They have a lot of people that need to approve. The invoices get routed. They get stamped when they were entered, and then they're getting sorted, and people like to mark them up. Some customers requested a markup tool. So that's what the annotation is for. So that basically stays an image on top of an image. So you can run reports with the annotations or without the annotations. But from an approver's perspective, 90% of the time, you're either going to approve invoices and maybe you may have some that you have to reject or modify. But that's basically it from an approver's perspective. Very easy. Now I'm going to log out of RapidPay and I'm going to show you what it looks like in MDS Aspire. So I am on in MDS Aspire query vouchers screen, and I can filter or sort by anything that I want. Maybe I want to see all of the open invoices for a particular vendor that are pending approval. I can do that. Or maybe I want to run invoices just for a specific company. Right now, I'm defaulting to open invoices that are pending approval. I can click on any one of these. It lets me know on the invoice screen itself that it is pending approval, and I could click on this track invoice button to see who it's waiting to be approved by this user. So you have your full query vouchers. You can filter, slice, and dice search for whatever you're looking for, which is really helpful. And then the last thing I want to point out is reporting. So Adam mentioned that you can include the images of those invoices in your monthly report packages. We do have a report called Paid Images, and you can include that report into your report package. In order to run the report packages, you go to Reports, Report Packager, select the package that you want to run. So I want to do my sample package. I want to run it for BC Tower, and I want to run it for this period. By the way, I could continue Inspire. You can run multiple reports at the same time. That's not something you could do in MDS Explorer, but I can go ahead and say yes and run additional packages. I don't want to do that now. I just want to go to view my reports. And this is going to let me know anything that's processing, what's been viewed today, recent history. So this is an example of what the report package can look like with the images of those invoices. So many of you are familiar with this already, but I'm just going to go to the end where I have some images. So this is the report we were talking about, images of paid invoices for whatever period you're running it for. And these are all pulling from RapidPay. So in conclusion, RapidPay eliminates a lot of your data entry by using the OCR. It will allow you to create approval workflows based upon your business process and gives you full visibility and transparency. It helps to automate preparing those monthly report packages as well. It saves a lot of time in having to find the copies and attach them to those report packages. From any perspective, whether you're drilling down from the GL or querying vouchers in the system, you could always drill down to the underlying transactions. If you would like to see a deeper dive of the MDS RapidPay system, please do not hesitate to reach out to either myself or your account executive, and we'll be happy to give you a demonstration of how the system works.
Thank you, Wendy. Due to the cost of labor, you don't need to save 80% of time. You really only need to save 25% of time to be in the black on this thing. This covers efficiency, saving time, and of course, security with the approval workflows. I wanted to bring up that if for some reason you wanted to completely outsource the opening of the mail, the scanning of the invoices, we do have a partner in Edenred that can handle this. And essentially, invoices are going out to these guys. They're opening up all the mail, they're handling all the paper, they're scanning it, they're coding it, and then they're feeding that approval system that Wendy showed you. So this is an option. Again, we could get into more detail on that on an individual call if anybody wants more information. We have a couple of people that are doing this, but RapidPay seems to be able to get the job done because it's like a really good hybrid between totally manual entry and totally outsourcing it. I'd like to kick it over to Casey, who is going to talk about e-payment automation.
All right, thanks, Adam. So throughout, you've been seeing how you could optimize all aspects of the AP process. And now we're going to focus on the actual outgoing payment through the use of electronic or e-payments. Just as Adam has mentioned a few times, the three key objectives here with the payment optimization are creating efficiencies for both you and your vendors, managing costs through these efficiencies that you'll gain, as well as with the revenue through rebates on virtual card payments, which I'll get into. And then, of course, enhancing the security of payments. So think of it like this. Instead of printing and mailing hundreds or thousands of check payments per month, which is timely and costly, as we've seen, these payments are completed through our processor on your behalf. And since you will not be printing checks in-house, you would instead simply click a button in your MDS platform to have the full approved job sent off to our processor for optimal payments to be made by either virtual card or ACH or check. And this is all based on your vendor preference. So we are not determining and dictating how they are getting paid. They will be paid based on their preference. Now, ideally, of course, all vendors would accept virtual card. We know that's not the case. In fact, we know that the majority likely won't yet, and that's expected. And it's actually okay with all this. So I'm going to walk you through the actual e-payments lifecycle. You'll approve the payment file, and that gets submitted to the processor. Then there is a large team just ready to pick up the phones and contact your vendors to advise that payments are coming and to determine their preferred method of payment. They'll first walk through the features and benefits of virtual credit card for them. If that works for them, if they like that, they're enrolled, they get paid through virtual credit card. If not, this large team, they'll talk about the features and benefits of ACH, give them the option of getting paid that way. And if so, if they like that, they'll go ahead and be paid via ACH. If not, we'll finish up with a check. Good old fashioned checks, still get the bills paid. And if that's how a vendor wants to get paid, that's how they will get paid. So payments will be processed accordingly based on vendor preference. And of course, you need the remittance that is going to be provided to you. So what's going to happen with virtual credit card is pretty unique and exciting. So for any of your vendors that are going to accept virtual credit card and get paid that way, there's going to be a rebate that comes back to you. So how and why will rebates come back to you? So we all know, of course, processors are going to charge a fee every time a credit card or virtual card is used. That fee, it's dispersed to multiple parties, including the payer or you. So why though? Why is some of that money, why is that fee, that charge going to get sent back to you? Simply put, without your payments, the processor would not be processing payments, therefore not collecting any fees. The fees are then dispersed with a portion going to you, similar to how points on a personal credit card work. It's an incentive to use the credit card. It's an incentive to make payments through virtual card. So that's how and why some of that money would come back to you as a rebate. So the question is then, why would vendors when there is that fee? So first off, many vendors already are accepting cards. And some of those reasons that some already are and some will in the future are, let's face it, it's faster payments to them. It's guaranteed funds. It's more secure transactions. And just like on your end, there's no check handling. If they're receiving electronic payments, there's no check handling on their end either. So I do want to remind you all, though, your vendors will still be paid based on their preferences. So if they don't want the virtual card, they're either going to be paid via ACH or standard check. We're not removing that ability and that choice from your vendors. So to finish up here, just again, why automate and not optimize AP with electronic or e-payments? It's to create those efficiencies for both you and your vendors. It helps to really manage or even reduce costs through efficiencies as well as revenue through rebates on the virtual card payments. And then finally, enhance the security of payments. So reach out to me, reach out to your account executive with any questions, and we'd be happy to go through this a little bit more to see how it would work for you.
Okay. Thank you, Casey. So before we jump into the section about fraud, I'm going to go ahead and launch a quick poll while I talk about this next slide. I'm just going to give you a second to answer that. So the question is, have any of you experienced fraud in your office? It's possible some of you don't know that fraud is actually happening. That happens as well. But I can tell you that I've heard some real horror stories. There could be fraud happening for a month or two before it's caught. And due to the nature of property management, as you all know, it's unique in the world in that you guys have so many bank accounts that you manage. So if you start experiencing fraud across these accounts, it could set off a whole slew of repercussions. So I'm going to pull the poll down. Let's take a look at the results if we can. So we've got 10 responses, and it looks like roughly half of you have experienced fraud. Hey, if it's not already obvious, direct financial losses are a big deal. Sometimes you'll be on the hook for it. Sometimes your bank could take care of it. But in either case, your funds are going to be tied up for some time. There's a huge operational disruption because if you experience fraud, your bank is probably going to make you shut down all of your accounts and reopen new accounts. And obviously, there's a huge loss of productivity there. And it could also have an impact on your owners and your tenants. There could be automated deposits coming into accounts. There could be payments coming out of your accounts automatically. And those accounts could be hooked up to a variety of different third parties. They all have to get reset up. So we're talking possible bounce deposits, resident confusion, a whole cascade of phone calls into your office, reputational damage here. If you're a third-party management company and you're trying to win the trust of co-op and condo boards, it's a small world out here in New York City real estate. Besides for just how much of a pain it is and how much money it can cost you, it could also cost you your hard-earned reputation. Let's talk about how you can really put a wrapper and lock down your bank accounts. And we're adding new positive pay lockdowns on a weekly basis because unfortunately, just the world we live in is fraud becomes more and more common every day. So how does positive pay work? Every bank that I've ever come across offers positive pay as a potential service to their customers. And sometimes if you have experienced fraud, they may even force you to adopt positive pay because they're taking on some financial risk too, if they're guaranteeing the funds and guaranteeing that they're going to cover you in the event of fraud. So how does this work? Essentially, there is an automated feed between your MDS accounts payable system and the bank so that every time you make a payment out of your system and send it out into the world, whether that's a check that you're printing and mailing from your office, or whether it's some kind of an e-payment that Casey discussed earlier, if somebody shows up with that payment instrument and they try to cash it at the bank, if the bank hasn't received a notification from your MDS system that you, in fact, cut this payment and booked it in your software, they will not provide the funds to the vendor or to whoever's showing up with that check. right? So it's pretty straightforward, but it's a brilliant, simple solution, right? If there's something that it hasn't been booked in MDS, that means you probably don't want it to be paid because it's fraudulent. And this will automatically lock all of that stuff down. Again, in that same theme of security, think of it as if you have experienced fraud, it could be incredibly disruptive and let's call it suboptimal to be scrambling for 2 weeks, closing and opening bank accounts and getting them all set up again. Because we talked about it a lot, I do want to just quickly summarize what we went through. And the first thing is Wendy covered RapidPay, which is really your invoice scanning and approval system. Casey discussed vendor e-payments, which gives you the ability to just totally electronically pay your vendors in the most optimal way possible with either a virtual credit card where they'll get a rebate, an ACH payment, which is way less expensive than printing and mailing a check, or a remote print and mail option. But again, from your point of view, taking that process out of your hands and making it totally remote. And then finally, we went over Positive Pay, which is locking down your bank accounts, and that full service Edenred invoice capture integration. That wraps up the presentation for today. We'd be happy to sit with you and really dig in deep to figure out if you can truly achieve the security, the time savings, and ultimately the cash savings